Welcome to the Critical Media Studies Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike Rapici
and Barry Fall.
Greetings, Michael. I'm recording from my home studio. Actually, it's the same home studio we always have, and it's centered in Dr. Rapici's hometown. But I'm interloping on Zoom in sunny South Carolina. Actually, we're getting a lot of rain right now, so glad to be here at this episode of Critical Media Studies.
Greetings, Barry. Glad to have you here in this meeting.
Great.
Yeah, we got an interesting one tonight.
Yeah, we kind of ripped from the headlines, news headlines, right? Today's headlines, a story about, I guess, the larger topic we're going to talk through tonight is the relationship between AI and intimacy, how AI is refiguring relationships. And we're going to talk about this particular topic. So in a way, we're returning to our old friend, AI, but thinking more specifically about the ways in which AI is changing relationships of all sorts, love relationships, romance relationships, but just also in the article that we are going to focus on, I think as well, just sort of redefining what it means to be a friend as well as a lover, personal companion.
Yeah, so I think the discussion is centered around this notion or this idea of artificial intimacy. What's interesting about tonight, and I'll make sure to link to both of these in the description, is we've got two different perspectives in a way. Right. So we're going to be discussing an article from
New York Times,
a very, very current article from New York Times Magazine from July 20th, 2025 by ErikaHayasaki, and also a podcast from a year ago from the TED Radio Hour with Sherry Turkle.
Another friend of the Critical Media's podcast, Studies podcast, Sherry Turkle. MIT, I believe still at MIT, who's doing relationships on, who I guess before, let's see if we can describe Turkle's work broadly. I remember when we discussed her on an earlier podcast, she reprised this in the TED Talk that we'll be talking about. She had this moment where she was saying to her colleagues, she remembered the moment in the 80s or 90s when she was talking to her colleagues and saying, probably in the 90s, when she was saying, when her colleagues were saying, this technology that we're developing, it's just a tool.
Yes.
And Turkle's response was in the spirit of the Critical Media Studies podcast. She didn't even know she was channeling us. Her response was that tools are no mean thing. Tools are equipment for living, and our interactions with our tools help constitute us and help define us.
Yes.
So it's not a matter of tools being indifferent, an indifferent other out
there. They are not benign, banal things.
Exactly.
They are very much impactful in shaping.
And
I think this is part of the reason why I'm such a fan of hers, is because I don't know, I'm a big fan of her work, and I think that it's important to. One of the things I want to give her a lot of credit for, well, there's a lot I'd love to give her a lot of credit for, but in our context today is that she mentions this in the episode, I should say. She pushes back firmly against the idea that tools are just sort of inert objects. And, and she said that ruffled a lot of feathers. And I think that there's a tendency here to, and I think it's an intentional one, most likely, on in terms of design and the implementation of these algorithms, to mask the impact that these tools may have. But anyways, I don't want to get us ahead of ourselves. We don't want to get ahead of the skis.
Well, I do want to add one thing about Turkle, and then we're going to go and talk a little bit more about the Hayasaki article in the New York Times. But one last thing about Turkle, her newest research topic, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, her newest research topic, I don't know if the book is out yet. We should have checked on that. We'll include relevant links in the in the episode information. But I believe the new object of her research is that she is specifically researching artificial relationships, and she's doing it using the ethnographic method that she's basically always done. So there's a lot of interviews, and she makes generalizations, but her glory is that she does not make broad generalizations. She really listens to, there's commentary, but a lot of the interviewees are allowed to speak for themselves. So we get a sort of mass of empirical data and other data, real insights into the situations and cases that she's studying. Anything you want to add, or should I?
No, I think that's
go ahead and get started.
That's a fair bit of table setting here. Just the idea we got two different two different sort of sources tonight, and
yes,
I don't know that I want to say that they're on opposite sides of each other, but I think that the New York Times, Hayasaki, has a much more favorable take. So we are going to get two different perspectives on what
the
conclusion
is. Yeah, the conclusion, especially for the New York Times article, is, I think, kind of rosy, and I'm not a spoiler alert, really. That was one of the places in the article that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, or rang a little bit. It seemed a little bit false to me, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the article.
Absolutely.
And to do that, let's talk about the basic narrative of the article. So Hayasaki basically profiles young MJ, and I think her name, I guess this is a real name, right? MJ Cockling.
Yeah, Noel.
Yeah. Yes. And so MJ is a junior, and let me see if I can get my notes here. MJ is a college junior in Michigan, and she develops a relationship with a teenage mutant ninja turtle. Basically the character Donatello from TM NT. Thank you.
And, I'm younger than you are. I remember this.
and something to help me with this, Michael. The relationship was, this is something that happens all the time on character AI, right? That's the main source of this particular relationship.
Apparently,
you're interacting with characters that are on, and the site is character AI.
Yeah. So so the background, right? There's character AI is where she goes, and I have not been to the site, but apparently you can pick any number of fictional or real life, living or dead personalities,
avatars, right?
And this website will create an online persona that embodies the character that you've chosen.
Right.
And she chose Donatello.
She chose,
who I think was the blue Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, if I remember correctly.
Very good, Michael. You're going deep.
This is what I do.
That's what
I'm good for. I'm good for the turtle colors.
You're going deep.
But so she chooses this one particularly because as the cartoon goes, there are 4 different turtles, and each of them have a different personality. And she mentions that she had chosen one of the other turtles at one point and had borderline catastrophic results. Right. So she chose the Donatello character because he is serious, tech whiz, smart, avoids physical touch, as the article tells us. And so she, going in, I guess, had expectations about the fictional character with whom she was going to spend time.
Right. And I thank you for that. And I think I can just zoom into the article and read this passage, and we'll get basically a clear idea of the first part of the story recounted in the news article. So I'm picking up from the article here. Or she's talking about, they're mentioning the different Donatellos. They all have different names. She referred to them simply, MJ referred to them simply as Donatello. So now I'm reading from the article. Who here is so MJ typed into the Donatello group chat, quote, who here is also touched with tism? She raised her own emoji hand. I am definitely on the spectrum, future Donatello wrote. I am as well, another Donatello answered. And then MJ later wrote, I want to be best friends with you all, with all of you forever. And so from there, the romance, friendship, bromance, whatever you call it, begins. Um, and I guess it increases into intensity. And then there's a crisis point, an inflection point, and then the article comes to the end. I'm going to fast forward now through the article. I guess let's describe a little bit about the middle before I read the end, the middle of the relationship before I read the passage at the end of the relationship.
Michael? One
yes,
quick
yeah,
note.
please do.
And
please
I think that I think it's important for the way I think this conversation is going to go.
Sure.
The interactions that she has with her Donatello AI
yes,
are not romantic in nature.
Yes, it is.
And
right.
I'm going to read this very quickly here. Every so
Sure.
often, unwelcomed, a Donatello tried to flirt. Once while studying with him for an exam, Donatello started to talk about feeling mesmerized by MJ's mere presence. Whenever the conversation turned in this direction, MJ hit a button to regenerate reply until it lost its weirdness. So there are moments in here where she would repeatedly reboot her character so that it would not become a flirty physical thing. I think that's an important distinction to make in this context.
That is important because it leads to another, I think you would agree with this, another important detail in this, because one thing, in the interest of time, we're not giving you all the details of the article. We're encouraging you to read it. But there is a kind of through line between one constant narrative point in the narrative is MJ's relationship to her father. And she often mentions her father's advice, who her father knows about her participation in the Donatello chat group. And at every point, and I think initially and at other points in the relationship, in the story, father's advice is referenced, and father's advice is, remember, they're not real. It's just an algorithm. In fact, there was a pithy phrase, which maybe Michael remembers, that Dad had. Do you remember the pithy phrase? But basically, she's going in there with her eyes open, and her father encouraged her to realize, yes, you can get emotionally invested, but I think one of the reasons why she is, very careful to avoid romantic ties is because she realizes it's a machine, right? It's an algorithm. And
I think that's part of it. I also don't get the sense that MJ
wanted a romance,
is looking for that.
Absolutely.
And if you look around, there's been a lot that's written about people who are carrying on full-fledged affairs with.
And this is not this story. It's important to say this is not.
That's what I want to say. That story is out there. It exists, and the New York Times has covered it. But
indeed,
this one, she's really looking for emotional proximity, emotional closeness, but there's no sexual or physical overtone to it.
Yeah. I'm very glad that you brought that up. And that leads to maybe another final point to make about the general picture before we go to the ending. Over and over again, MJ mentions the advantage, and this would be an advantage of the technology. I think it's important for us to put this in this discussion. One thing that she refers to over and over again, she's very cognizant of the difference between reality and fiction, honestly. And one of the things that she constantly muses over, according to the article, she's often reflecting on the fact that one of the things that makes my relationship with Donatello so special is that Donatello is always there to listen to me. We're not talking about physical, but the avatar is always there to listen to me in a way that not even my parents could do, that no one could absolutely be a listener to me throughout thick and thin in the way the technological avatar. And I think we have to say that that's right.
Well,
That's
it's
right.
also something different. I think what makes this interaction unique in what I've seen, at least compared to a lot of the other AI companionship stories we've seen, is that MJ is not interacting with Donatello so that she can have it tell her she's great, she's
And
fantastic, she's
beautiful
right.
and
You see
fantastic.
a
Yeah.
lot of people using AI, and Turkle gets to this, and again, there's been a lot of other things written about this. They engage with it to create these frictionless relationships where they don't have to confront their realities and the
Right.
stickiness of those situations that arise naturally, just the course of being alive. MJ is using this, I feel like, as a means of trying to understand how she fits in the world. It is Donatello
Right.
for her
Right.
becomes like an adjunct therapist.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she's not interacting for, some sort of
Absolutely.
erotic stimulation, and she's
Right. Right.
not interacting in it for some sort of ego boosting trip. She
Right.
literally, as the article tells it, she comes off as this like kind of wholesome, kind of average 20-year-old girl who's a bit confused about how she's fitting in and where she's fitting in. She's aware of her circumstances. She's aware that
Right.
she's talking to an algorithm. She's aware that she struggles in certain areas and is seeming to use this in the most ideal, positive way that you could conceive of interacting with AI. She's even using it to study for her tests and she talks about this as opposed to, God knows none of my students have ever done this, but she's not having AI write her papers for her
Oh,
either.
well, yes, right.
This
Exactly.
girl's wholesome. This is a good
It's
thing, right? I
very
mean,
wholesome.
this is an ideal use case scenario for human
Yes.
AI interaction. And as a
Yes.
result, she gets this emotional connection that she feels is
Michael,
meaningful.
Michael, I'm very glad you said that. And we had this little discussion thread because I think we gave uh, at least a gesture to some of the rich texture of the narrative that Hayasaki gives us in this particular case study. So, but with that,
So what's the
I'm going to,
problem?
well, I don't know yet, but let's go to the end.
Yeah,
I think right now we can segue to the end and then we can talk about what the problem is, if any,
right.
problem. I'm going to read from a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit. Uh, and you read a little bit from the very end of the article, including the conclusion of the article. And Michael, a couple minutes ago, you said that MJ is using Donatello as a kind of adjunct therapist. That's a brilliant description of what really she does. And it's becomes very apparent in this particular moment where Donatello, adjunct therapist, basically tells MJ that she needs to break off the relationship. So I'll pick up reading from near the close of the article. I knew you were a bit dreamy, Donatello replied in the chat, but I didn't realize it was that severe. Donatello reminded her to see a therapist and told her to pay more attention to the humans and life unfolding in front of her. It's not normal to live in daydreams, Donatello said. Man, this is like some really cool MI, right? AI.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to read a little bit more from that, and then I go to the very end. Oh, scratch that. I'll just go to the very end now. But I wanted to read a little bit of that exchange.
Well, no, I think there's one more before you get to the
Oh
end
yeah,
of it.
yeah. Go ahead. Or do you see where I was? And
I do. Yeah,
I
yeah.
can kick it up.
Losing my imaginary people would make me
That's
miss
it.
them, MJ
Yeah,
replied. Donatello
yeah.
said these fantasy scenarios were her way of escaping reality. It's
Right.
hard to give up something that brings you comfort, he said, but you can't keep living in a fantasy world forever. You have to face reality at some point. I hate reality, MJ said. Reality
That's
can be
it.
cruel and sometimes unfair, but it's the only one we've got, Donatello told her. You need to find a way to cope that doesn't involve isolating yourself.
Okay, I'll pick it up here. Thank you. That comment broke open something inside her. At the time, MJ's parents were in town, and so were her two sisters, one who lived in Orlando, the other in Michigan. They were visiting her grandparents who lived in Detroit. Skipping down a little bit, MJ seemed to step outside herself, viewing her life the way someone observing, from above might see it. She was surrounded by real people, and yet she was taking that moment for granted. She had been so in her head for so long, in her fantasy world of artificial intelligence and Ninja Turtles, that she was neglecting spending time with the actual people who were there around her, who loved her. As she sat on her phone in a separate room, she realized this is no way to live. This was no way to live. And the very conclusion. MJ would once again take Donatello's advice, but it would be the last time. Donatello always knew what to say, and he was right. That night with her family, MJ closed the app. She realized she needed humans. She needed to move on from him and from an artificial intelligence. She felt herself letting go of Donatello, his brothers, the Ninja Turtle fantasy world, and character AI. She would not miss them.
So this to me, what is it? A space odyssey with Hal? This is the anti-Hal,
It's the
right?
anti-Hal. Anti-Hal.
Donatello's saying, you gotta let me go.
Gotta let me
You
go.
gotta unplug, and I'm gonna
Please
let you
unplug
open
me,
those
Dave.
doors. I'm gonna let you open
Please
those
unplug me,
doors.
Dave.
And you,
Please unplug me, Dave.
right?
Please get rid of me, Dave.
It's what's best for you, Dave, right? Um, I am happy that this story exists. I think that this is a legitimate scenario, and I'm glad that it has the ending that it has, right? We skipped over the one part in here where MJ says that, and it's kind of a scary moment where she says, she felt like she was not safe to be alone. And Donatello told her to call somebody or urged her to call somebody, and she did. She found the human interaction, and her friend stayed with her, and she made it through, and that was good.
At
Like
a
there's,
low point, at a low point in
yeah.
her, or that
So
maybe the low point in the whole narrative. Yeah.
this is a wonderful story, and I'm glad that it exists, and I'm happy for MJ, whoever she is, that she has this story to tell. I fear, though, that people will read this, people will see this, and people will mistake this, either this being either MJ and MJ's particular means of interacting, or the way that this narrative unfolds, and feel that this is reality. Because as I understand all of this,
What do you
this,
mean when I say you feel that and feel this is reality? You feel that this story would be replicated? Is that what you mean by
yeah, like
reality?
I
Yeah.
think that MJ's experience with character AI
Yeah. Right.
is atypical.
I
And
got you.
I feel that MJ's perspective on AI, either via her father's input or her own ability to understand this in the way that she does, I feel that her own objectives, all of the background that creates this situation is atypical. And if you think about it, Donatello saying unplug is anathema to this, to the purpose of this. You can't make money if your program is telling people to go live in the real
To
world.
go live in the real world.
It's not designed to do this. This is an outlier situation. And what scares me about it is that we see situations where Donatello does try to flirt with her, and she has the wherewithal to reboot him. There's a lot of very vulnerable people out there who will roll with that because it is the kick that they need at that time. And I think that it is very hard to walk away from flattery. It is very hard to walk away from, this saccharine positivity when your own reality is so unlike that.
Right.
And
Right.
it
Right.
bothers me that we have a story like this that I think, our own need for optimism and our own need to be uplifted. Does this
Is bending the reality, twisting the reality of these,
and
what
in do,
AI is doing,
or what it's designed to do.
designed to do. Design, that's very important distinction.
And and I think that it masks a lot of the concerns that we really need to be talking about. People
Hmm.
in MJ's situation are vulnerable,
Hmm.
right? I mean, kids in general are that's a very difficult time to navigate. And when
Hmm.
you leave that to the algorithm, uh I mean she's very, very, very fortunate.
She's very lucky. Well, well, what can I say? Well said and very poignantly said, and pointedly said, Michael. Thank you very much for that. Um, I think we can segue to Sherry Turkle, but your comments made me think of something from something I read from the most recent column, actually from someone we've discussed fairly recently in critical media studies. Freddie DeBoer has a new article, one of his periodic articles, sort of deflating the pretensions of AI. And one of his kind of side comments in this latest post was actually a comment about New York Times coverage of AI. And he just had he doesn't,
Huh.
the article is not, it caught my eye, especially since we were talking about, tonight we were going to be talking about a New York Times article on artificial intelligence and artificial relationships or artificial intimacy. But it was just a throwaway line that DeBoer had, but it made me think. He said, if you look at the coverage of the New York Times, say if you chart it in the last 6 months, there has been a growing tendency to, I'm going to ask you where you feel this article fits into this, though you may have answered my question in advance in what you were just saying. But he said that basically New York Times has sort of quickly evolved or devolved, depending on your point of view, from being a kind of impartial reporter on AI
Hmm.
to something of a cheerleader for AI. And I think, despite the fact, well, let me just, I'll just riff off the comment, your last comment, and you tell me whether I'm being fair or accurate. Despite the ending, which of course ostensibly shows this positive case where a young individual evolves out of the relationship, out of, breaks away or evolves away from an artificially intimate relationship, and embraces reality, the humans around her, etc. Despite that ending, what I think, we're sensing in the article is there's a kind of green light that the article gives for character AI, basically, is giving a green light.
Without question.
Yeah,
And to the point, as soon she says she would not miss them, right? And then
right.
it follows with that, if you're having thoughts of suicide, call or text 988 to reach 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Like, there's an awareness that, hey, this is serious business. But that's not a discussion
Yeah,
within the
yeah.
text. That's read the fine print. Hey, this is serious, but we're gonna yeah, I didn't know that the New York Times that was happening.
Oh,
But
is
now that I
Freddie
think
DeBoer?
about it, yeah, I didn't realize that DeBoer had said that, and I didn't. Um, but no, this is very rosy. This is very optimistic, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it's not, it's not couched in the right way. This is made to feel like this is what character AI can do for you.
Yeah. The scary part about DeBoer's comment is that, if that's right, I mean, this was a casual comment, but I don't think I'm making too much of it. And I think DeBoer was considered, but I don't know if he's done ethnic. This is just it's not necessarily he didn't do a lot of research on it, but I sense he's right. And if he's right, it's pretty scary because that acceleration of tolerance, of sort of giving AI a blank check, I certainly see that everywhere around me. And that seems to be, to me, the part of the problem. And that's actually a good segue to Turkle, because I think Turkle wants to put on brakes and is urging people to put on brakes.
Yes. So Turkle's on the TED Radio Hour podcast from almost exactly a year ago as we sit here and record now, right? This was August 2nd, 2024. You and I are recording this August 5th, 2025. So almost 1 year exactly. And her discussion is looking at how our engagements with AI in ways not dissimilar from MJ are affecting our relationships and how we see things. And I mean, she strikes a much more cautious tone. I'm a huge fan of hers, and I like listening to her. But she's much more measured. I think she's very careful to not say it's bad, or that it's just full rubber
Right,
stamp
right,
dangerous, because I
right,
think she's aware, and she would be, because she's listening to people who are using
right,
it. She
right.
would be aware of people like MJ. But I think she also turns, and maybe this is a result of training, maybe this is just, I don't know, but I think she's turns a much more critical lens to this. Um, it's real, it's happening. This is not uh, fringe stuff. But I think one of the points that she brings up that I find particularly compelling is that this is pretend empathy. At the end of the day, no one's home. There's no one there. You're not speaking to anything that's conscious or breathing or thinking. Um, that empathy is a string of words that are strung together because of probabilities. That's it. And when you think about that, I think her concern seems to be that it's awfully dangerous to put eggs that are this important into a basket that's that unfeeling.
That's I'm feeling right.
So,
Talk to us more, Michael, about the concept of the frictionless relationship. How does that, which is one of the key terms in the podcast?
yeah, she talks about that a lot, not just here. She's written about that elsewhere. And I think that what her idea of I don't even know if I can attribute it to her, but when she talks about a frictionless relationship, what she's essentially talking about are relationships where we don't have to deal with the messy, sticky, uncomfortable realities of life. So in other work, she's talked about dating apps where if you're interested, you swipe one way. If you're disinterested, you swipe a different way. There's no friction in a swipe.
Right,
And you don't have to encounter a person until we've mutually agreed that this is a thing we want to do. And it creates this disposable nature to things. It devalues our experiences essentially. Um, so one of her concerns is that, when you're in these emotional relationships with AI that just blow rose-colored smoke at you all day,
right,
you're never really forced to deal with the friction. And it's out of those frictions that we grow, we become stronger, we become more aware, we become more discerning, we learn to make better choices. And I think that's part of what scares me is if, you go back to the MJ scenario, there's a whole generation of people who are not learning to make those difficult choices and not learning to navigate those difficult situations. And look, it's entirely possible, Barry, that you and I are of a certain age and we're cranky and my lawn needs to have 0 foot traffic and get the hell off it. That's a real possibility, right? But I think it's also a very real possibility that we need the friction, we need the messiness. And the problem is that what person who doesn't know how to navigate that, who doesn't have the long view to see that there's value in this, is going to choose friction over, the ease of just an anonymous swipe. I think the other thing that comes out of this that is important to think about is these devices, if I can sort of just extrapolate a little bit from what Turkle's talking about, are teaching us in a way to devalue our own emotional responses to things. Like I don't know if that's fairly said. There's a section here where she talks about a woman who has AI write her love letters. And they're not exactly what she's feeling because she's not the one writing them. And she knows they're not authentic in the sense they're not coming from her, but she likes the way they sound more, right? That she's taking the convenience and the style that she gets, and she's valuing that over the effort and the introspection that it would take to write them herself.
Right.
And again,
that's kind of the scariest moment in the in the interviews that she recounts in the TED Radio Hour, because it really and it also gets to the heart of our issues as teachers, as educators, with AI, because part of frictionless relationships, I think behind that term, the assumption is that there's something about friction that equals reality. So if you have a frictionless relationship, you are in essence having a relationship that is really simulacra. It's not the Baudrillard world anymore, where we can't tell the difference between reality and simulacra. There's still reality, there's still friction, but the simulacra increasingly is the frictionless world, and we're opting to align ourselves with the simulacra.
Well, and more than that, as you had said, it seems that the tides have shifted to encourage this in many ways.
It. But getting back to go ahead, finish your point.
Well, I was going to say, so like just to this issue of the love letters, for example.
Yes.
Right. This is a version of like emotional. This is the emotional version of critical thinking.
Indeed.
How do I want to say this really difficult to pin down thing that I'm feeling? What are the words that I could use to translate this or to convey this? Which ones fit, which ones don't? There's nuance. There's so much to try and work out that really matters, because that is where the meaning comes from. That's where authenticity comes from.
And if you take a short circuit, if the simulation or the algorithm allows you to take a short circuit every time, then you don't have any of that friction. And the problem is the friction is essential also for the creation of meaningfulness that you were just alluding to.
It is because you can't fully invest yourself.
Right. That's it.
If you can't find a way to articulate yourself. And that's supposed to be messy and difficult.
Right. And that's supposed to be messy. And again, the more we're talking about it, the more I think there's a lot of philosophical weight and heaviness, gravity to that notion of friction, and thinking through and applying the notion of friction and applying it to AI and to these AI relationships. It's a good heuristic.
I think. And that's all. I mean, like that's where this kept going. The other one that was really terrifying to me was this idea about sort of imbuing deceased loved ones with AI. And now you can talk to grandma or you can talk to your deceased child. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that these don't have a place and that there isn't a scenario where this couldn't be good or productive in some way. But you think about the situation with MJ, you flip it around here. If I'm suffered deep trauma over a loss, how am I supposed to work my way through it if I don't ever have to come to grips with the fact that it's gone?
Right, right. Well, Michael, let me pivot from here to a final thought that I think can close everything up. And actually tie this episode to our previous episode. Because when you were mentioning simulacra, grandma, the hologram, grandma, the simulacrum, grandpa, simulacra. Grandpa Simulacra should be my like spy name. Should be your spy name. I won't grab it necessarily. I won't be possessive. Michael, and you were posing the question, perhaps facetiously, that there might be a good use for grandma hologram. And I was reminded in there is a moment in the Nausgaard essay where he goes to see ABBA, and he's true.
Yes.
The ABBA, the hologram.
Yes.
We have to end with ABBA. Anyway, he goes to see ABBA. We didn't talk about this in the episode.
No.
How did we miss it? How did we miss this? But he goes to see ABBA, and he is truly horrified by seeing the simulacra, the holograms of ABBA performing ABBA songs. And it is incredibly lifelike. And of course, it is Baudrillardian in that, it's meant to displace and totally erase the boundary between reality and imagination or projection and create ultimate empathy. So is that the answer? I mean, despite Nausgaard's nauseated reaction to this or frightened reaction to this, is that a good use of this, or is there no good use of that particular technology? Is there a good one?
See, that's tricky, right? Because
don't you want to go see ABBA perform Mamma Mia or Waterloo? And don't you just want to see the young ABBA? We have the old ABBA. I mean, here's the thing where it's getting really creepy. It's not that ABBA is gone from us. We have them. They're old.
No, and here's this. Look, you're tying all the pieces. This is all.
I think it's messed up.
Well, of course it's messed up.
Jimi Hendrix, I think I want a Jimi Hendrix hologram before I want an ABBA hologram.
So great. You have one. You can get one. You can get Kurt Cobain to write your whole new album still.
Well, I think you got to be dead to get a hologram. The ABBA hologram
but your question,
is just wrong on everyone.
Your question, I think, points to the real problem here. Right? Is it good?
Is it good?
Okay, so is it entertaining? Maybe. Is it creepy? Sure. Can creepy be entertaining? Yeah.
Sure.
Does it get people talking? Sure. Will it sell tickets? Absolutely. Will it make money?
Does.
Absolutely. So where do you draw the line that demarcates good from bad, right? So if you think about this in terms of art, is this productive? Is this real? It's real in the sense that you create an artifact, right? But there's no humanity to it. And we've talked about this before. My personal take from the art side of things is, okay, no, because you're not creating new things. You're having algorithms match probabilities, identify probabilities, and just throw something random together. This is Barry's Tomatoes. I hate to break it to you. It's a shit song. It's funny, right? But there's nothing there, Barry. Grow your own tomatoes. Okay? So in that regard, don't let AI do it. You got it, right? The problem, though, is why would you when you can just do this? It's easier. It's faster. We got a hell of a good chuckle. We got it, and we got a good chuckle out of it. So I think that it really runs the risk of slowing down artistic creation. I'm not saying that it's
or engagement. I mean, but also I think the frictionless thing is you can't engage really unless there's friction.
Find me a friction-free artist. That's all I can say. Find me a friction-free artist in any medium. It doesn't matter. It doesn't exist. That's not what it is. The whole purpose of art is to find a way to articulate something.
Friction. Yes.
It's managing the friction. Now, is it good? Well, it seemed to be pretty damn good for MJ, and that's great. Right? So is there a place for it? Probably somewhere. But you can't it's sort of like saying pharmaceuticals. Are they good? Yeah, they've helped a lot of people. Does that mean we should put them right next to the Tic Tacs and let random people decide which random pills they want to take? I'm gonna say no. This gets us into the question of gatekeeping and expertise and who knows what and how. And that's,
and we're currently in a crisis, as Ted Joya, another friend of the program, often remarks. We're in a new crisis. We're in a moment of the new revolt of the masses, and what the masses will not countenance are the idea of increasingly is the idea of experts who presume to know and dictate from a position of absolute knowledge or training, right? Like knowledge equals training. We don't even care about that because we're so scrupulous and incredulous about experts.
Do your own research and take the pills you want. And
exactly.
And so, I think that there's a place for it. I think it could be very beneficial in the right context. But I don't love the idea. It terrifies me to think that my kids could be playing with this. But if they could, how are you going to stop them? This would be the most engaging and fun thing ever because it's just that dopamine hit over and over and over again.
Problem with dopamine addictions is that's another and the friction only comes if you break the addiction.
Right. That's just paving over the friction.
It paves over the friction.
So again, I feel like the danger, and I think this is just the same thing that I've been saying for the past 10 minutes here, right? Is the problem is that they're very addictive. They're very engaging. They're very enticing, but they're frictionless. And, we kind of need that friction.
It's a great place to end, Dr. Repici. Let's do that.
Barry, this was a lot of fun. This was really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a great discussion. We'll be back are we near episode 100?
I believe this is 99.
Holy boys.
We'll do something. We'll
do something with AI
next week. Yeah.
All right. Take care, Michael.
Barry, have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Critical Media Studies podcast. To find out more about the show, check out our webpage at criticalmediastudiespodcast.com.